James the Red Engine loved working on the island of Soooo. He was a mixed traffic engine and could pull both coaches and trucks quite easily. James made sure to remind everyone who would listen of just how versatile he was. The way James talked, anyone would think he was the only engine qualified to work on the Fat Controller's railway. James had a good heart, but he was conceited. He also had a very hot temper, which I'm sorry to say got him into a lot of trouble. "I am a passionate engine," James would say whenever anything went wrong. "Of course, James," the other engines replied. But they knew that James wouldn't get into such messes if he wouldn't let his frustrations get the best of him. One day, James learned the value of humility the hard way. He was dozing comfortably in the sheds as the fireman stoked his fire. He was warm and didn't want to move. "Sure will, James," called his driver. James looked cross. He did not appreciate being disturbed. "It's not time for me to leave yet," James snarled. "It is now," his driver assured him. "There's been a last-minute change to the timetable. Gordon has taken ill, and you're to pull the express." James was delighted. "The express!" he thought to himself. "I will look splendid flying down the line." What James didn't know was that the coaches normally used for the express were at the works being repainted. The replacement coaches had only been taken out a few times and were not as nice as the other coaches. Gordon was the only engine who could handle them. He knew how to talk to coaches, but James, unfortunately, did not. James beamed as he entered the station. He looked up and down the platform as the passengers shuffled towards the coaches. "All of these passengers are here to see what a remarkable engine I am. Gordon will be jealous when he finds out that I pulled his express." The coaches heard every word. "What an arrogant engine!" they chimed in unison.
"I don't want him."
"Where is Gordon?" James, in his bliss, didn't hear the coaches and coupled to the train, oblivious. "I say, you coaches," James shouted proudly, "I expect you to do exactly as I say. I want to beat Gordon's time no matter what."
"What kind of engine does he think he is?"
"Yes, he's not at all like Gordon. We won't go." The coaches were true to their word. After the guards whistled, James tried to pull out of the station, but the coaches wouldn't budge. "Come on, you coaches!" James shouted, steam billowing around him as his wheels spun on the rails. "Come on!" James's wheels continued to slip, but the coaches remained firmly in place. Suddenly, with a loud crack, the coupling broke and James shot forward. The coaches laughed and laughed as James stood on the line, stunned. James's temper began to boil as he realized that the coaches had played a trick on him. "That's the way you want it. That's the way it shall be," James muttered under his breath. Without thinking, James reared back and bumped the coaches hard like he did with the trucks when they misbehaved. The sound echoed throughout the station. "Oh! Oh! Oh!" the coaches cried. The passengers inside the coaches were tossed upside down and sideways. James realized his mistake immediately. "Oh my!" he cried, red in the face with embarrassment. Luckily, no one was hurt. The Fat Controller burst out of his office onto the platform to see what all the noise was. When he saw the passengers clambering out of the coaches, he knew what had happened. He shouted, "You could have harmed your passengers!" The Fat Controller scolded. "I'm sorry, sir," James said softly. "Saying you're sorry won't help the passengers get to their destinations. Now I'll have to find new coaches and a new engine to pull them. James, You have caused confusion and delay. All James could do was look at his buffers. You will stay in the sheds until you can learn to control your temper. If you can't, I shall have to send you away. James felt awful. He had a lot to think about indeed.